There's a certain kind of wealth most of us chase without ever stopping to question what we're actually running toward. I used to believe that building wealth meant working harder, moving faster, sacrificing more. Then I picked up the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, a guide to wealth and happiness by Eric Jorgenson. And within the first few pages, Naval Ravikant's philosophy stopped me cold. This wasn't about hustle culture. It wasn't about passive income hacks or chasing status. It was about wealth creation through clarity, leverage, and freedom. Freedom over money. Always. When I first opened the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, I honestly expected another productivity manifesto. Something about optimization, something about doing more. What I found instead was far more challenging and far more liberating. Eric Jorgenson didn't write this book in the traditional sense. He curated it. He pulled together Naval's insights from podcasts, interviews, essays, and tweets into a clear, grounded guide on building assets, making better decisions, and escaping the money versus status game that traps so many of us. What surprised me most was how radically Naval reframes wealth. He doesn't treat it as a number in your bank account or a finish line you eventually cross. He sees wealth as a byproduct, a result of specific and rare skills, long-term thinking, and intelligent leverage, whether that leverage comes from time, money, or knowledge. But what stayed with me even more was that this book isn't really about money. It's about happiness and freedom. About life principles for success that aren't measured in dollars, but in peace, autonomy, and alignment. I wasn't prepared for how deeply it would challenge my assumptions about what it actually means to live well. One idea that hit me early was Naval's distinction between wealth and hard work. Like most people, I'd grown up believing that working harder was the path to financial freedom. More hours, more effort, more sacrifice. But Naval dismantles that belief completely. He argues that you don't get rich by selling your time. You get rich by owning things. Equity, intellectual property, businesses. Assets that continue to work for you, even when you're not working. That's the essence of leverage. And leverage, as I learned, comes in three forms: labor, capital, and products with no marginal cost of replication, things like code and media. The most empowering part? You don't need permission to use the last two. What I loved about this book is how unapologetically it refuses to romanticize the grind. Naval places decision-making and judgment above effort. In an age of infinite leverage, judgment becomes the ultimate skill. You can have the best tools, the strongest work ethic, the most capital. But if your decisions are poor, none of it compounds. And judgment, he insists, isn't something you're born with. It's built. Through reading, through reflection, through honest self-assessment over time. Then there's how Naval talks about happiness. Most books treat happiness as something you earn later, after success, after money, after validation. Naval flips that entirely. He sees happiness as a skill, a default state you return to when you stop creating unnecessary problems for yourself. And freedom, in his view, is the highest form of wealth. Not just financial freedom, but freedom from expectations. Freedom from societal narratives. Freedom from the need to impress anyone. That realization hit me hard. I started noticing how much energy I'd been spending playing status games, trying to look successful instead of quietly building something meaningful. Naval also emphasizes long-term thinking, planting seeds you may not harvest for years. In a world obsessed with instant results, that patience feels almost radical. But it's precisely that patience, the willingness to delay gratification and let small wins compound, that separates lasting wealth from temporary income. And throughout it all, Jorgenson's curation keeps Naval's voice sharp, grounded, and practical. Never preachy, never abstract, just clear. If you let it, the Almanack of Naval Ravikant will quietly dismantle the stories you've been telling yourself about success. It won't give you a step-by-step blueprint. And that's the point. What it offers instead is a lens. A way of seeing wealth, work, and happiness through clarity, autonomy, and long-term alignment. I found myself returning to certain passages again and again, not because they were complex, but because they were true in a way that takes time to fully absorb. If you apply even a fraction of what Naval teaches, if you begin thinking in terms of leverage, judgment, and freedom rather than hours worked and status earned, your life starts to shift. Not overnight, but steadily, deeply, in ways that actually matter. This book doesn't ask you to become someone else. It asks you to stop being less than who you already are. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe to Well-Read Club for more book breakdowns and mindset insights that actually matter.